phone as well. Cool. Good afternoon and good morning to the people joining us from the other side of the world. And welcome to the very first Magnitude Live webinar stream that we've got going. This is going to be the first of many. And what we're going to be doing today is taking you guys through a app build and how we construct things on the back end of our system. I'm going to propose a problem being for a construction company, and we're going to obviously build an app that can deal with that issue and manage it accordingly. So let's get started. Cool. So here at Magnitude, one of the very first things that before we start building an app at all, the very first thing that needs to be done is the planning phase. And the issue that we're proposing today is that we've got a construction company that is responsible for maintaining their fleet of vehicles, so their machines. And this could apply for actual cars or physical machines in, say, a factory floor. And the issue that we've got currently is that we can't keep track of inspections and whether or not issues have arisen from certain machines, as well as we can't track the resolution of these issues and how long it's taking people to actually solve these problems. So the very first thing that we ever do is we fill out what we like to call an in-app process. Now, I've pre-populated this one just so that you guys don't need to watch me filling it out, but I'm going to just take you through what one of these in-app processes look like. And to give you a better idea, the way that this is normally done is that one of our salesmen or the person responsible for creating the process for the client will fill out one of these forms and send it through to me or one of my configurators. And from there, we'll then get to work on building that process, because everything that we need is listed inside of this form that you're going to see now. So great, let's get started. Cool. First thing, obviously, we want to know what the company name is. This plays quite an important role, obviously, in naming conventions as well as theming. So we've got to make sure that the website is correct, so that our graphic designer can build a theme appropriate for the app. Key person, so that's fine. Okay, very first question that we've got. Determine a specific objective. So like I said, in our case, we're looking to manage our machines and keep track of any issues and the resolution of those issues as well. So how long is it taking issues to get fixed? What's done about the issues, as well as whether or not this issue can be prevented in the future. Okay, great. So how would this whole process work? So like I've explained, an inspector does a machine assessment looking for any issues with the product. So this could be either a vehicle or a machine itself. They note down any issues and send through that form to the workshop. The workshop will receive the report and then act accordingly to fix the issues. Once the issues have been fixed, the workshop fills out the corresponding report, sending it back and alerting the initiator, which in this case is the inspector, the guy that went out first and initiated the report, to tell him that the said machine has been fixed, and he can now go off and make sure that whatever the technician has done has actually been done and that it works properly. And once that has been completed, the inspector can resolve the form. We always give them activities names. So in this case, machine assessment. Initiator. Initiator. So just so that you guys can understand what an initiator is in Magnitude, it is the person that starts the information capturing for this activity. So in this case, it's the inspector. And the reason for this is that the inspector will go out. He'll take his device, whether that be, it can be a desktop, a mobile, or a tablet, and can go out and obviously conduct an assessment on the machine itself. They do this at the beginning of their shift, And they're obviously inspecting the machine to ensure that the machine's up to safety regulations, as well as that it's in good working condition. This is the main crux of it. So this is the actual part of what's going to be filled out. It's the things that we're looking to measure and manage. If something can't be measured, it obviously can't be managed. So these drop-down questions here, or these list of questions that you see before you, are the questions that we would like to populate our initiator form with. So the form that the inspector is going to be filling out. And what this allows the team here at Magnitude to do is to build this form with very little interaction from the initial person, because they've given all the information over now already. So the kind of things that we're looking for is, obviously you'd like to know what the machine make is. You'd obviously like to know the model. The machine probably has a number as well. And there's the serial number, the hours of operation for that machine, and what site that machine is sitting on. A couple of other questions then. So once we've got the details of the machine, were there any issues discovered? Is the machine operational? And then what you can do is you go down to issues itself. So give a description of the issue, details. We want to categorize it so that we can start pulling statistics on where we're experiencing machines more often. Where we're experiencing issues more often. You can pop some attachments in here. So this allows the guy to take photos or videos, even attach PDFs if that was the case. So that obviously the workshop on that end can get a good idea of what's going on. The issue severity is obviously quite important, because you'd like to know whether or not this needs to be dealt with ASAP, or if it's only a mild issue. Perfect. The amount of time that it would take the person to fill out this form, obviously this is a quite important factor to consider when you're building a activity for someone. You can't give people too long and cumbersome reports to fill out, whether that be on paper or digital for that matter. You can't have it too long. So it's just something to keep in mind. Next question, when the form is captured, what would determine a negative outcome and would be flagged for alerts? If the machine is not operational. So if you check up top here, there's a question, is the machine operational? If it hits a no, then there must be a negative outcome. Great, then the next step down you'll see is the direct respondent. The direct respondent in Magnitude is always the person that receives the form, in this case the report, and is responsible for acting upon the report and sending a corresponding report back in. So in this case it would be this workshop, or the technician in that case, but the workshop manager would be the guy that would send a report back in to say what was done on this machine and how confident they are that that's actually been fixed. Right? Why would the direct respondent complete this? So they obviously want to keep record of what issues are currently in the company, as well as the status of those issues. And the issues that have been fixed, they'd like to know what the technician or the workshop's view is on whether or not this issue has been fixed for a long period of time or short. How confident are they in that the issue has been fixed? Right? When would the direct respondent complete this? So as soon as the issue has been solved from the technician side, the workshop manager would then submit the inform in telling them what they've done. In this way around, you can now start pulling analytics that would show you how long it takes people to submit an issue, and generally speaking, how long it takes somebody to fix those issues. Okay, this is quite an important question here, number 12. You'll see that it asks whether or not the direct respondent, so in this case the workshop, needs to see all the irrelevant information from the capture form. The capture form in this case was what the initiator, being the inspector, fills out on his side. So you may have a case where you're interacting with people outside your company, and Magnitude has the ability to hide certain information if you obviously don't want to send that across. But in this case, we've got the inspector conducting a report and somebody obviously needing to act on that report. So they would need all the relevant information so that they can do a good enough job to get that fixed. Right, number 13, what key items need to be captured in the response form? So this is you can think of it like it was the form up top, where we were just listing the information from over here. This is now the response form, so the form that the workshop would fill out responding back into the inspector so that he can then go conduct his final inspection and resolve the process, in other words, signing off that it has been fixed. And you'll see here, so just a couple of things that we've listed. What has been done with the machine. So we'd like to know whether it's been scrapped, sold, or repaired. What has been done to fix the issues. The total time that it's taken so that you can start getting an idea of how much time this is actually costing on all the problems. And any problems discovered during the fix. So perhaps they didn't have the correct machines and the company had to order them in, that sort of thing. And issue resolved, and like I was saying, whether or not the technician or the workshop in this case is happy with the solution or slightly concerned. And it also allows them to add any comments and attach pictures or videos of what they've done to actually fix it. And like I said, it can be any kind of attachment that they can upload. Right, next step down, number 14. When the response form is captured, what would determine a negative outcome? So in other words, this is the, like I said earlier, with the machine not being operational, that would determine a negative outcome for the inspector's form. But for the form coming back in from the workshop, what would we like to flag in this case? And I've just popped down there if problems were discovered during the fix or if the workshop is concerned with the solution. So they may have conducted a fix on the machine, but they're a little bit worried about it. So you would want people to know that that they're not 100% with that fix, whatever it may be. Cool. I'll pass this. So there's a couple other questions here that didn't particularly pertain to this demo. Obviously here we've, being technology, we can allow certain people access to view what's happening between other parties. So we call this person the third parties. And in this case, it would be perhaps the drivers in the head office. So if you knew that you were driving a particular fleet of trucks and you saw an inspection come in on your truck and that it was broken, you'd obviously want to know so that you can act accordingly, as well as head office, because they've obviously got to account for those costs. Right? Chat templates. These are and I'll show you guys at a later stage, but you can see that there's a chat section attached to every form within the system, and it allows you to communicate around that form itself. So there's no need for giant WhatsApp groups where you're getting pinged for messages that don't really apply to you. You can now talk to people specifically, and more importantly, specifically around one's particular form or report in that case. And these chat templates, all I've put in here is work started, interrupted, and finished. The reason for that is that I'd like to know when the technician begins work on the job. If he's interrupted by anything, he'd obviously put that in there. And once his job is complete, I'd like him to tell the workshop manager that he's finished. And that this way we can now get a good gauge for how long it's taking issues to be fixed once they get started. Right, then what constitutes a resolve process? So the resolve process, you can think of resolve as a means of taking something off your to-do list. So once the inspector is satisfied with the fix, the form can be resolved. So what will happen is the form will come back to the inspector, he'll get a notification, and can then go back to the machine and conduct a final assessment, making sure that it's fixed. If not, can go into the chat and communicate back with the guys, and if it is, can resolve the process thereafter. And who has the authority to resolve? Only the initiator, aka the inspector. Right? We don't need to automatically resolve something, but we do have the ability to resolve a form if it comes in and it reaches a certain benchmark. If it doesn't need to be managed, then we can resolve it automatically. So management by exception. Okay. Number 22 here. Based on the initial capture form, so the form that the inspector fills out, what key summary items would you want to view in the capture summary feedback? So it may not have much relevance, but what we've got is for every report, you've got a summary of that report. And we can choose particular bits of information to throw in that quick summary. So just the things that I'd like to see. So machine make, model number, serial number, the site where the machine is sitting, and whether or not any issues were discovered on that machine. So from this way, I can scroll through a list of my reports and decide which ones I want to go look at. Great, and then this is exactly the same thing, except it's for the response form. So this is the form that the workshop will be filling out. And it's the same thing, like I say, it's the summary feedback of that report. And what sort of information would you like to see there? So based on this, what has been done to the machine, I'd like to see what actually has happened. I'd like to see how long they've taken to do it. And I'd also like to know if any problems were discovered during the fix and whether or not that issue is resolved, being the satisfied with the solution or concerned. We can also set a time limit where forms need to be resolved within a specific time frame, or else alerts can be set. But in this case, we don't need one. Snapshot, you'll see snapshot is a means of analytics that allows you to see how well something's performing, or for that matter, how badly something's performing. What snapshot allows us to do is create actual weightings within our form, just so that management of the, in this case, issues is a lot easier. So if we go down here, you'll see that in our capture form, what sort of things are we looking for? So were any issues discovered? Obviously, if an issue is discovered, we want that form to drop its mark. And if there's no issues, we would like that form to obviously have an increased mark for that matter. And what Snapshot allows us to do is, like I said, it's just a part of our analytics. And it allows us to just get a quick overview of that form or that particular activity. Okay. Same thing for this, just for the response form, aka the form that the workshop will fill out. Right. Then table view. To give you an idea, table view is an overall count of something. So for example, hours, I would like a drop-down list of say 1 to 12 hours. And I'd like to know on average, how often is 8 hours being clicked? This allows you to just get a gauge for over a total of how many reports have been sent, how many hours have been selected in that case. Or for example, what category is more often? So is steering a problem 80% of the time? Then come down, response form, exactly the same as what I've just gone through at the top here, except this is the form the workshop fills out. And we'd obviously like to see this in our table view as well. And keeping in mind that everything that you guys have seen here so far, once it's been built, that's not set in stone. Everything can be changed, including what's visible in our capture, including what's visible in our table view to everything else. Okay, cool. And we just want to show you guys what some of these images look like. Great, so this is our snapshot. Gives you an overall view, like I'm saying, and a performance on how well stuff has done. This is the table view. So like I was saying, the count. So in this case, micro, small, medium, and large. So out of a total of 30 entries, 11 of them are large. Therefore, 30% of the time out of that particular search parameter being the 14th of August 2018 to the 14th of September 2018, 11 forms have come in which recognize large. And if you see here at the very top, the question that's being asked is company size. So in general, you can see that this company most of the time goes after large companies, medium, small, and micro, pretty much in that order. And just some general comments. This is obviously for just a learning curve more than anything else, so that we can obviously act accordingly if somebody's not sure about anything. And whether or not you understand the different aspects of the process, and as well as the business requirements. And you'll see that one of the very last questions here, the second last question. The users that are going to be using the device at the end of the day. People that, today's world, we've got WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, all the rest of it. And Magnitude's no real different to that. It's another app on your phone. And if you know how to use the others, you'll know how to use Magnitude. And then also we found that you can't obviously take a real life business process on paper and just stick it into a digital fashion. There's definitely some amendments that need to be made. And just as an example, you can add pictures to a mobile device where you can't do that really to a piece of paper that you're filling out. Okay, great. And then once this has obviously been filled out, There's a submit button down at the bottom. You hit submit, that comes through to the team here at Magnitude, and we begin building your process. And any questions that you may have after there, we'll just communicate back with you down in the chat section. Okay, perfect. Let's get building. Great, so what you guys are looking at here, this is obviously our CMS. It stands for Central Management System. And you can think of this as similar to any other software that you may use on a computer, where we've just got our tabs on the left-hand side down here. Everything from configuration, so actually building things. And some of these words might look familiar from what you've just seen, being a capture form. And what we'll do now is, this is obviously plain, and we're going to just start building exactly that process into the system, and then we'll be demoing that afterwards. Perfect. So step one, we obviously need to create the industry, or sorry, create the company here called construction in our case. And the very first thing that every company and every person for that matter has is contacts. Can't do business without engaging with people. So very first thing, contact database. And please note that there's one contact database per group, and in this case, group would be the company. So one contact database per company. And you'll see that the format that the system follows is all very much the same through each tab as we go down. Great, we just need to give our contact database a title. This is just for reference within the CMS so that you know where to find it thereafter. So let's just call it Construction Web. Okay, great, we can give it a bit of a description if we'd like. And then now the actual creation of the contact database itself. So question title in this case is, if I ask somebody for their contact details, what sort of information would they be providing through to me? So in this case, obviously the first one is name. We've got an array of different types of questions here that just allow us to manipulate the information in the best possible fashion. So in this case, name, the best one would be text box. We've also got a couple of little buttons that we can go through here quickly. Group field, what that'll allow you to do is when you create a group within your system, so you may have a management group that, or maybe actually use ours in real world. The workshop, it may be consisting of more than one member. So in that case, you'd want to create a group. Mandatory, obviously, whether or not this field has to be filled out. For the sake of this demo, though, I'm not going to fill out anything mandatory, just so that we can obviously demonstrate properly. Display and contact list. So you'll see that there's two little buttons here, display and contact list and display and detailed contact. So like everybody's got on their cell phone, you can think of it similar to that. You've got a list of all of your contacts on your phone. But I can almost guarantee that if I look at any of your guys' phones, that you don't have a person's email address in that list. You've most likely got their name and surname, and at most perhaps the company that they work for. So in this case, I would like to obviously see name in my detail of my contact, but I would also like to see it in my contact list. So just my list of all of my contacts so that I can actually find it properly. You just tick there. And then we've obviously got customization options here, whether I'd like to make the wording name a little bit bold. I can change the color of it, font size, italic. You go bold. Cool. So in this case, I'm just going to make mine bold. And we can add a hint down here as well. I'm just going to add a hint for the sake of representation. First name. And that'll be that gray block that hides, that appears in the block right before you start typing. All you do, you add it down there, and you'll see that it drops down to the bottom. And I can see I've got a total of one question there now. The next one through, question title. Next one, surname. Same thing, surname will also be a text box. And don't worry about all of these things. I'm going to go through each one at the capture form section, just because there's a couple of extra ones in capture form. Perfect, so this will be a text box. Display it in your contact list, because we'd also like to see the person's surname. And because we made name bold, let's make surname bold as well. Great, pop it down there. Then next one is mobile. And you'll see that there's 4 options here, active, passive, and for both email and mobile. The reason for this is we've got the ability to send emails and SMSs out of our system. So you can engage with people that don't necessarily have the app. And the system needs to know what email address you would like to send things through, or for that matter, what number you would like to send an SMS to. So in this case, and select mobile. I don't need to see that in my contact list because I don't know what people's numbers are off by heart. Add that in. Next one is email. In this case, active email. Make it bold. I also don't want to see email in my contact list because there's no reason to show me somebody's email address, especially if I know what their name is. Can add that in. And then maybe the last one we'd like to see, just because we might have a list of everybody in here, because our contact database is comprised of both internal staff, customers, and perhaps your suppliers. You'd like to know what company these people are from. In this case, it would also be a text box and bold as well. Great. Once we're done with this, you'll see obviously a list of what our questions look like down at the bottom. And I can see here that there's a total of 5. It also just gives me a nice idea of what type of question this is, in case maybe I've missed something, or if I'd like to change one thereafter. Once that's done, you just hit form complete at the bottom. You can hit OK. Form will now save. And you'll see that it then sits here. And this is obviously your contact database title. Once you start building, you'll obviously have a list of these things and you'd like to just keep track of them properly. Great. The next step down is the capture form. The capture form in this case, to give you guys an idea, is the form that the initiator fills out. So in this case, the inspector. And if I just jump back here to my sheet, and I go over here, you'll see that question 7 here asks, what key items need to be captured in order to measure and manage the objective? So these are the key items that we need inside the capture form in order for the inspector to capture the relevant information. Go here and you'll see that it looks exactly the same as what the contact database looked like. Okay, perfect. And then just a couple of extra things, but at its core, it's pretty much the same. You'll see that the capture form title at the top, so we just give it one, Machine Assessment Web. Description again. Then we've got the first question here is escalation notification based on form. What this does is it gives your form a pass-fail mark. So in other words, let's say we make this, say, 80%. It means that I'm going to now start popping some questions in here, like I was saying with the snapshot, that allows certain questions to increase or lower the overall percentage of what the form gets at the end of the day. If the form gets an 81, it'll receive a green face, and if it gets a 79, it'll receive a red face. And obviously on the dot 80 is neutral, therefore blue. You'll see that we've also got chart type here. The way that this works is it allows us to either compare with, obviously it says there compare with average or a benchmark. And what this means is that in your snapshot, and I'll just bring it up here for you guys. In your snapshot here, you'll see that you've obviously got green bars. And what you're allowed to do is you can now set a performance benchmark of, say, 80%. And what that'll mean is that if this bar does not achieve 80%, the bar will be red. So I could just see from this, that would be green, red, 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 and green again. So it just allows you to manage it accordingly. Obviously, if you don't want a fixed benchmark, we do allow for just an overall average across the board. So kind of like when we were all in school, just trying to get grade averages. Next one down, to create the capture form. So this is now when we actually start populating the capture form with some actual questions. So first things first, we need to tell this capture form what contact database it's going to be talking to. The reason for this is that we obviously send this to the direct respondent, and the direct respondent sits in our contact database. If we hit that there, obviously there's the contact database that we've just made. Go down to select the questions. Name is the first one. You'll see that it'll auto pre-populate everything there. If I just scroll down, there's my hint as well. Can add it in, and you'll see this one looks slightly different where it says ref field on the right hand side there then. What this means is that it's obviously been referenced from somewhere else within the system. And in this case, I can tell by clicking there that it's been referenced from the contact database construction web. Next one down, surname. After surname, mobile. We just need to go through each of these. Just pop them in there. Email. And last but not least, company name. Okay, perfect. And you'll see all of them have that little blue ref field on the right-hand side as well. If we scroll back up here, okay, cool. Now that we've done our referencing from our contact database, we actually need to begin the build of the capture form itself. So what the inspector in this case will be filling out. So very first thing, we obviously want to make it look a little bit neat. So we're just going to put a bit of a heading in here. So maybe begin the assessment. Begin the assessment. And I'd like to just go through with you guys now the different options of question types that we've got. So text box you've seen, it's obviously just a text box. What it allows is up to 1,000 characters. A text box multi-line allows up to 3,000 characters and is obviously just a little bit of a bigger block. Active and passive, we've gone through. Numeric field obviously only allows numeric numbers. And you can choose when building this form whether or not you want to allow decimals or not. So if you're ordering, say, a product, maybe hats, you obviously wouldn't allow 0.4, or sorry, 4.3. But if you're dealing with, say, currency, you obviously would like some decimal points in there. And you'll see that what will happen is these little drop-down blocks here will change accordingly depending on the question that you select. So like I was saying with numeric field, if I hit numeric field, you'll see I get given now an extra option that says allow for decimals or not. Next one's down. There we've got these ratings, yes, no's, and multi-selects. These are the crux of the analytics behind our system. So obviously predetermined text is far better for pulling stats than free text is. And what these allow is radio button and checkbox are immediately visible drop-downs, or sorry, immediately visible options, where these drop-down ones, obviously you have to click a button to provide a drop-down list and then select accordingly. And obviously we've got one of each being a multiple selection and a single selection for each of them. Yes, no's are obviously yes and no's. We've got positive and negative comments. So whether the comments, you can allow this for different ratings. You've got date item, which is obviously the, if you'd like to select from a calendar. A time item, which is a selection from a clock, as well as a date and time item, which is a combined field that makes you fill out both the date and the time. Next one down, you'll see is a label item. So that's the one that we'll be going with now for this particular field. The label item is the heading item. So it allows you to then just put what could be instructional messages or just maybe headings thereafter. Attachment is obviously allows you to add, that allows the user to add any attachments to the system. And this particular field, if you pop an attachment field in there, is not limited to one attachment. You'll see that at activity level, I'll be limiting the amount of overall attachments for the entire activity. A graphic image is a preloaded image that we can put inside the app. So maybe a restaurant is setting tables. You can always put a picture of what the table looks like beforehand. The last one down here is a database reference. What that allows you to do is it's similar to these multi-option questions, except you can import from an Excel document. So perhaps a company's got a list of 5,000 product codes. If they'll most likely have it on an Excel document, and they can then just submit that in and upload that straight to the app. What the database reference field also allows you to do is a user can add to that dropdown. So let's say that you're submitting a job card through to someone and you hire somebody new. You'd want to be able to add that person to the system without having to go to the back end and add a new question in. You can then just give certain users access to add to that database as they go. So in this case, it's just going to be a normal label item. Great. Then we're going to make it bold, and let's perhaps change its color here. So I know that our magnitude blue is 0.55 AFF. The font size, make that say 18, just as something a little bit bigger, and bold. Now add that question in, and you'll see that it pops down at the bottom, and the colors have changed accordingly. Okay, next one down. We'd obviously like to get the machine details, being the, over here, being these details up here, where the machine is sitting and what make and model that machine is. So make this a label item as well, just so that it's easy to read. Change this color as well. 055AFF. Bold, and the font size will make this slightly smaller at 15. Okay, great. And then you'll see it'll be sitting down there at the bottom. Okay, perfect. Okay, now let's actually start putting in some questions that the inspector can fill out. First one, machine make. And in this case, just a normal text box is fine. We don't need a multi-text line. That's too much. So just a text box is okay. Pop that. And also, one thing that we did note is if we scroll down here, you'll see that it obviously asked which questions we would like to see in our summary feedback. So in this case, our capture summary feedback. And if I go back to this section here, you'll see that this is the feedback list. So would I like to see this particular question in my feedback list? So according to the brief, machine make, we want it there. Display and feedback list, and add question. And you'll see that it then pops down at the bottom, and I can tell that it's a normal text box. Okay, next question in. Machine model. Also just a normal text box in this case. And I remember from this that they would like model inside of the feedback summary as well. So just tick that little list there. Add that question, it'll pop down to the bottom. Next one, machine number. In this case, just double check, yep, machine number. And in this case, we're just going to put a normal text box in this one. Also to be displayed in our feedback list. Pop it down in there. Then machine serial number. So, oops. Machine serial number. And in this case, we'll make it a text box as well. We also want to see that in our feedback list. Pop it down at the bottom. Then machine hours. And this, what we'll do is we'll make this a numeric field because there's definitely no text in this numeric field. We don't going to allow a decimal. We'll just have it total. Or actually, yeah, let's throw a decimal in there. Display and feedback list. And if we take this this text here and we put it over here, oops. Okay. Machine hours. This will now allow for this question to pull through to our table view. Perfect. And you'll see that if I scroll down, you'll see that I've started populating with the machine details. The last one that I remember that they wanted was the site that the machine sat on. So site name. Just a normal text box is fine from this case. And I mean, to give you an idea, this site name could also be a drop down. If you had, say, 30 sites or thereafter, you could then put a list of all of the sites that you could then pop in here. Also like to display this in my feedback list so that I can see what site this machine was on without having to go into the form itself. Great, and I think that's everything that we needed from our machine details section. Let's actually start popping in the actual assessment for that machine itself. So pop in a heading, assessment, like that. Make it a normal label item, bold, make it 15 like the other one was, and we'll also change these numbers to 55 AFF. Perfect. And we can then throw that question down at the bottom. Okay. Next one up. Let's actually put the questions is. So let me go double check what what questions they wanted. If I scroll back up, you'll see they're asking here. So one of the first things, were any issues discovered on this machine? Were any issues discovered on this machine? And we want to give it a small abbreviation because that's a whole sentence. So we'll just pop in here, issues. What we'll make is we'll make this a radio button so that it's obviously only a single select. We'd like to display this in our feedback list because we'd like to be able to see whether or not this particular form had any issues. And you'll see that now, because we've chosen this particular question type, this is obviously changed again. Our graph, in this case, is our snapshot that we mentioned earlier. Table view is obviously table view that we mentioned earlier. Graph being a representation of the quality of something, table view being a representation of the count of something. Scroll down, and now you'll see this is a little bit of a different one that we haven't had. Number of options. So in this case, I'd like to say, are there any issues, yes or no? In this case, I've got 2, so yes being one and no being the other one. I can choose how I want to display this. In this case, yes. And in this case, yes is the worst option, being that there are problems with the machine. So I'm going to leave that at 0, and I'm going to make no 100, because I want no to be the better mark that's chosen. I can then just add that question down, and you'll see that that question then pops down at the bottom, and I can tell the 2 options are yes and no from there. Okay, next question in. Is the machine operational? Quite important whether or not the machine can actually work. Just put the operational, and exactly the same as like what we've just done. Just pop a radio button in there. Display that in our feedback list. We'd also like to show this in our graphs because it actually has a weighting behind it. Scroll down, and the 2 options will be yes and no again. Oops, being yes and no. Oops, the other way around in this case. Yes, we do want the machine to be operational. So yes will be 100 in this sense, and no will be 0. Keep in mind that those numbers can obviously change depending on the weightings that you guys would like to choose. Okay, great. So now that we've got those 2 questions set, we'd now like to dive into, if there are issues that are captured, what are those issues, and can you please provide maybe some evidence of the issues themselves? Okay, first thing, let's put a label heading in. Label, bold, make this 15 so that it matches up with the rest of them. And we'll change this to 055 AFF, just so that the colors can match. Pop it down there. Great, and we've got issues down at the bottom. Okay, perfect. So what I'm going to be showing you guys now is what we call a repetitive field. A repetitive field allows for information to be put in a structured format, and you'll see that there's a little add more button, and it'll allow you to duplicate that bit of information. And but I will be showing you guys and touching on that point when we go through the demonstration to give you a bit of a better idea. So first thing we'd like, issue category. Issue category. This is just so that we can start putting analytics on how often something's coming up. So 5 in this sense, that we're going to just give you 5 little options, and we'll make this a single select drop down, and we're going to make it, like I said, we're going to make it repetitive. The category and whether or not it's the steering or the brakes or anything doesn't have a particular weighting to it, so there's no reason to show this in graphs. So we'll untick it from graphs, and we do want it to be repetitive. And you'll see that the repetitive asks for a table name or a group name. Make it number 1, and we'll just call it issues. Or maybe issues found. Let's just maybe leave it as issues. Perfect. In this case, we've got 5 options. Okay, first option being, say, the engine. Next one are, say, brakes, steering, undercarriage, and then perhaps the tires. Perfect, and you'll see we've left these all at 0. Reason being is that whether there's a problem with the engine or a problem with the brakes, that's the same thing, they both need to be fixed. So as a result of this all being 0, you see we've unticked showing graphs. Perfect, and you'll see that if we add this question now and we scroll down to it, you'll see it'll have a little square arrows next to it. On the far right hand side, you'll see next to the delete button, you'll see a little square block that looks like it's going around in a circle. The reason for this is that it now tells me that this particular question is repetitive. Okay, I'll scroll back up. I obviously now want to get a small description of what the issue was. Short description. Just a normal text box is fine in this case. I'd like this to form part of the repetitive group, and instead of making a new repetitive group, you'll see now that I have this group down at the bottom to select from. I can then select from this group, scroll down, and add the question. And in doing so, you'll see that now this next question has a square block there as well that's going around in a circle. Go back up. I'd now like a bit of a detailed description of the issue itself. Detailed description. And in this case, I'm going to offer them a little bit more than just a text box because they might want to start giving some paragraphs. So text box multi-line. I'd like this to form part of the repetitive options as well. Therefore, I will select the issues. Add the question. It'll pop down to the bottom. And then one of the second last things that we needed is an attachment. So maybe any pictures. Yeah, let's say, oops, attach pictures or videos. Okay, perfect. And you'll see that that's obviously the attachment option. Pop that in. We'd like that to be part of our repetitive group as well. So we'll throw it in there. We can then add the question in. And you'll see that down at the bottom, we've now got 4 questions comprised of this repetitive options. Last but not least is we'd like to know what the severity is of this particular issue. You might find a couple of issues during your inspection, and you'd like to know what the urgency of fixing these issues are. So, severity. And in this case, also a single select. Let's just do a radio button in this case, just to mix it up. Forms part of the repetitive group. Which one is the issues? In this case, we would like this one to form part of the graphs because obviously certain whether or not this thing is not operational or if it's just a mild issue, obviously we'll have ones that are better than others. We'll switch it to vertical. And number of options, we'll just offer 3. Okay, and it'll ask for the alias name. So let's say the first one is cannot operate. Cannot operate. Next one is maybe needs attention. Needs attention. And the final one is just a mild issue. Just a mild issue. So in this case, obviously my best option is this one, a mild issue. If the problem is not too severe, I want it to be that. And if it just needs attention, I'll take it at 50. Make sure that it's repetitive, and I can then add that question in. You'll see that obviously I have now a full list of what my form will look like. This is obviously the back end, but I can now start manipulating my form as I choose, and I can now start moving questions around as I'd like. Once I'm done, I can hit form complete. It'll save, and there's my form there. Next step is the questionnaire. The questionnaire in this case is the respondent form. So the form that the direct respondent fills out, so in this case the workshop. If we scroll down, and we look here for our response form. These are the sort of bits of information that, that the client would like to now capture, being from the workshop's perspective. Go here, you'll see it all looks very much the same, and I'll explain what this is just now. We can hit Add Questionnaire. Perfect. And you'll see very similar to what we were just looking at now with the capture form, just with a couple little bits that are different, like for example type. But other than that, all very much the same. So in this case, we called it machine assessment web. And let's also make this is exactly the same as like I mentioned on the capture form. This is the pass-fail mark for this form particularly itself. So here at Magnitude, we've got a couple of different types of activities that we make. We've got what we refer to as a QR code type activity, aka a feedback type. And what we've also got is a capture type, which is comprised of a capture form and a questionnaire. So just to give you a brief idea of what the difference is between them, a capture form will be comprised of both a capture form and a questionnaire, and the initial point of information gathering will take place in the app. So what that means is that in order for this process to start, you need to have somebody that has a username and password to the actual system and can actually initiate the process. What will happen with a feedback type is you've only got a questionnaire associated with it, no capture form at all. And what a feedback allows you to do is generate a link. And in doing that, you can now create a, you can now embed that link on, say, a website. You can also create that link into a QR code, and you can then put that QR code wherever you might like it. So in this case, we've just made a capture form. So I'm sure you've all guessed by now that the type that we're making is a capture form type. And what we'll do is then the same thing applies here for the chart type, whether or not this is compared with fixed benchmarks or just an overall average. Let's see if we go down. There's a one extra thing here. So if you remember, we referenced from our contact database, we referenced into our capture form earlier. So because we've done that, there's no reason to do it here. You'll see that if I do switch back to feedback, I now can select this, but I can't select this. If I switch back to my capture, which is the one we're making, I now can select that, but cannot select this. The reason for this is that obviously the information from our contact database is already residing within our capture form. So there's no reason to go grab from the contact database directly. We can grab it all from our capture form itself. So if we select here, I'd like a capture form reference, and you'll see that that's the capture form I'm obviously looking for. And what I'm going to be looking for here is mainly only the word name. And the reason for this is that I would like the name to be part of my notification that comes back when this form is filled out. So I need to have that field there in order for the system to know that that unique ID is what needs to be populated within the notification. If I scroll down, you'll see that I don't want to view this thing. So I'm going to unselect it, and I will show you where that plays a role later. I can then add that question in, and you'll see that it'll pop down at the bottom here then. Great, then we can actually start with the actual build. So first thing, like we always said, let's get ourselves a heading. Workshop report. Okay, great. Make that a label item. We'll make it bold, and we'll stick with the other form, which we made 18. And let's change this to 055 AFF. Right, and add that question in. Perfect, and it pops down there at the bottom. Cool, then let's go and grab the actual information that they were looking for in this form. So these are the questions that they'd like to populate it with. Cool, so very first, what has been done with the machine? Go back here. What has been done with the machine? Call it outcome as our abbreviation. Okay. And what we're going to do is we'll create a single select dropdown. We'd also like to view this in our feedback list like we were doing within our capture form. Pop it there. We'd like this to be in our graphs and our table view, and we've got 4 options for this one. First one being repair, and repair in this case is our best option. That's what we would like to do with the machine, so we're going to put that at 100. The next one is rebuild, obviously costing a lot more than said a repair would be, so not getting as high of a mark. Then the next option would be to sell the machine. And last but not least is if we can't recover it, we'll make it scrap. But because we've given all of these, we'll just make that round off and give that one the lowest mark. Add that question in, and you'll see there it sits down at the bottom there now. Okay, next question's through. What has been done to fix the issues? So this is the actual problem itself. What has been done to fix the issues? Question mark. Change that to what was done. Make that a multi-text line. Now we don't want to display this in our feedback list just because there may be a paragraph, there may be multiple paragraphs in here, and might be a bit much to display in there. We'll pop that question in. And there it is there as a multi-text line so that they can type out exactly what they've done. Next question is, how long? How long did the repair take? Change this to time. And in this case, we're just going to offer a single select drop-down. And for the sake of this demo, I'm not going to make anybody watch me type out too much. So let's go up to, say, a total of 12 hours. And I'd like to display this in my feedback list so that I can get an idea of how long this took to do. I don't want to show this in my graphs because I'm not going to have a small job is going to be faster than a large job. So there's no reason to punish people for taking a longer time on a job that might be longer. We'll go with number of options of 12, and we'll just go in increments of 1 hour up to 12. Keep bearing in mind that this can obviously be changed depending on the company or the business that's running there. 1 hour. And last one is 12 hours, but in this case, let's do a plus 12 hours. Okay, perfect. Now that we know that that's not in graphs, we can now add this question to the form. Okay, let's scroll back up. Now, if that did take longer than 12 hours, I'd like to know how long it did take. Please specify how many hours below. And we'll just make that an ordinary text box where they can then pop that question in if need be. Okay, then the next question through after the time was how many problems, and if they discovered any problems during this fix. So were there any problems discovered during the repair? Question there. Let's go with issues discovered. And in this case, I'd like it to just be a normal button. And this is going to be a yes, no. And obviously, if there were problems, I'd like to know about them. Therefore, if there are problems, I'd like the form to get less marks. So in that case, we want to show this in our snapshot. Therefore, I'm going to allow for allow for graphs. First one down, yes and no. And like I said, if the question is, were problems discovered If it's yes, that's an issue. If no, that's the better option. Add that question in, and it'll be down at the bottom there then. Scroll back up. And then I'm also thinking though that if they have discovered that any problems, what were those problems? So if yes, well, let's just put if yes, please explain below. And what we'll do is we'll make that a text box multi-line as well, just because you don't know how much information they might put through. Okay, and then once they've obviously completed this fix, you'd like a, or sorry, once they've actually notified you that they had a problem, so that perhaps something wasn't working with their machines that fixed the other machines, you can take a photo of that. So attach below. Sorry, attach pictures for reference below. Add the attachment, and you'll see that'll pop down at the bottom. Okay. Then one of the most things that you'd like to know is, has the issue been resolved? Has the issue been resolved? Change this to issue resolved. And I'll make this similar to the other ones. I'd also like this to be in my feedback list so that I'll know straight up by looking at it. Got 2, yes and no. Yes being the best answer, no being the worst. Add that question in. Okay. Then, like I was mentioning earlier, I think one of the last ones is issue whether or not they're happy with it. So, are you happy with the solution? Are you happy with the solution? Happy. And in this case, I'm going to make it a single select drop down, or perhaps a radio button, because there's not that many options. I'd like to display this in my feedback list, and also I'm going to leave this in my graphs because I've got better options than others. So in this case, I've got 3 of them. If I remember reading over here, happy with solution, solution's okay, and concerned with the solution. So you'll see our first one. Happy with the solution. Solution okay. And last one is and concerned with the solution. But what I should do is those capitals. Concerned. So obviously the best one here would be if you're happy with it. If the solution is just okay, you're going to get half marks. And if you're concerned, I'd like that drop to drop. Okay, just add that question in. Okay, then I'd also like to provide them with a field that offers comments. So I can just throw a comment block in here, multi-text line, throw that in. And then one last thing, just for a little bit of user guidance, we'll pop in a, before that, let's do an attachment. Attach pictures of the solution. Attachment. Add that in. Perfect. Next one, a little bit of user training. Perhaps click, submit, and you're done. Make this just an ordinary label. Perhaps bold. Let's also, again, we keep the same colors the whole time. FF, and we'll make this 15. And we'll put it italic as well. Perfect. Okay, great. Now that that's all in there, we can save our form. Great. And you'll see here that just before I started this, there was a preloaded form here called Webinar Machine Tell Us. Just to give you an idea of what the Tell Us is, it allows us to do user training. So the very, very first time that a user accesses the app and tries to use a particular activity, so in our case, machine assessment, there will be a Tell Us form that they need to go through in order to move on. So what you could do is you could teach the guys how to use it, and then ask them some questions that could then come through to a particular person who can then deal with it thereafter. Cool. So the next step down you'll see is theme. We've preloaded a theme in here now just because the theming side is done by a graphic designer, and I'm not going to be going through that today. But to give you an idea, what the theme is comprised of is different splash screens and logos, and it gets rendered in all these different resolutions. And you upload those resolutions. The reason for that is obviously not everybody has the same device. So you may be working off a desktop, or you might be working off a small cell phone, and you need the picture to pull through to each resolution. The next thing down is how it works. Perfect, the how it works. So we've just pre-populated the how it works, but let me explain to what it's called. And to give you an idea, the how it works gets put in the app, and it's a means at which the user, if they're not sure about this particular process, can go in here and get a better idea. So just a brief and easy looking one. This bit of text is all I've done is I've just grabbed it from this section over here that was filled out, telling me how the system works over here. All you would do is save, and I mean this is obviously a customizable document that you could add pictures to, anything that you choose. Next step down is we're done with the configuration tab of this, which is what you can think as the building blocks of the application, and we're now going to go into the gluing. So first step is industry. Okay, obviously add industry. Cool, so just give our industry a name. So in this case, I'm going to call it construction web. But what you would do is you could now start compartmentalizing different companies within your system to say automotive, insurance, perhaps hospitality, just different kinds of ones. Industry submitted. Cool, next step down is our group. So remember I touched on the very beginning, I said that there's one contact database per group, and a group is the company. And I'll show you what I mean by that now. Is you'll see that here where it asks for contact database, it asks for a particular contact database. Therefore, you cannot have two per group. If you go to industry, we obviously got to put this in something. Let's call it construction web, can be the group name. The theme that we're going to use is that webinar theme that you saw previously, and we don't need anything more, so we can save. And in doing so, we create the group. Perfect, and you'll see just from this now, I can tell what contact database this group uses, as well as the theme without going into it. This is almost like our summary feedback for the CMS. Next step down will be activity level. Activity is the main glue of everything. This is where we tell the system what capture form and what questionnaire get comprised or get pushed together in order to make one activity. So first thing, before we jump off at all, we've got to tell this activity that it's going to form part of which group. So in our case, it's this group. We need to give our activity a name. Machine assessment. And what type of activity is this? And a good way to remember this is that if you've gone through all that effort of creating a capture form and it doesn't ask you here for a capture form, something's wrong. If you just click this, you'll see that between tell us and how it works there, the capture form now appears. Perfect, got our questionnaire, machine assessment web, the tell us that we already had, next capture form, the how it works that we selected, And the next one down is contact questions. What this is it asks you which questions would like to pop up when you add a particular contact to this contact database using this particular activity that we're in right now, being machine assessment. So in this case, we would just like all of them. Okay, if we scroll past these things, don't need to worry about these for now. Our display smile, we would like to display our smiley on both our in form and our out form. And remember I said earlier that we've got attachment limits. So we've got a couple of, we can put an attachment question in there, and that particular question has an unlimited amount of attachments. That limit is then governed by the amount that I put here. So let's say for this that I'm going to put 15 because there might be quite a lot of pictures associated with it. Okay, next thing down, template text. So we had in this form here, we got asked for some templates being work started, work interrupted, and work finished. These three over here. And these are the templates, like I said, that are formed within the chat section and allow for predetermined text to be put in that chat. So in other words, it can be searched for. Work started. Work complete. And work interrupted. Okay, perfect. We also have the option to change these module names, so feedback, analysis, and capture, just to give you a brief understanding of what they are. The feedback section is where all of your forms sit, so every single report that's been filled out will sit in your feedback section. Your analysis is obviously your graphs, and your capture is how you initiate a new process, or what the inspector would hit when he gets there. So these don't make much sense in the sense of a machine assessment. So let's just change these names, and you can see at the top it says display name in app. I can now change these names accordingly. Maybe change it to new assessment. Then feedback. Perhaps do that to, let's make it all assessments. All assessments. Cool, and then you can save. Perfect. Next step down is establishment. Establishment is going to look a lot more confusing than the rest of it. Don't get overwhelmed by the amount that's here. All of it comes down to reading. To give you an idea of what an establishment is, a user, which is obviously a person using the app, in this case the inspector or the workshop, doesn't actually get access to an activity. What they get access to is an establishment, and an establishment has access to that activity, therefore giving them access to the activity. But what it allows us to do, more importantly than anything else, is you can create multiple establishments around one activity. So to give you an example, this machine assessment that we're doing right now, you may have different branches being perhaps in different countries. And you could have one activity that head office has, and you can create multiple establishments being the different countries that this company operates in. And you can then give rights to the people within their respective countries. They don't see, people that are sitting in Ghana don't need to see what's happening in South Africa, but head office needs to see all of it without having separate apps for each one. So same thing as always, you can just hit add establishment. We want to tell this establishment what group it's going to form part of, obviously this one. But you'll remember that when we made this thing, we made it tell us. Very first thing we need to do is select the tell us one and just make an establishment for the tell us. The reason for this is that I want to give somebody access to receive all the tell us so that they can act if somebody is not sure about something. And I can't do that if I don't have an establishment to assign access to a user. Time zone are we? We are in +2. Ferrari, Pretoria. Perfect. And then from this, just because it's the tell us, don't worry about any of this. We can then save. And in doing so, create the tell us. Obviously, if you would like a little bit of customization within the tell us, being emails that need to send, that's highly possible. Perfect. Great. Next one now. Now we're going to actually make the main establishment. Group. Construction web. Now the other activity, not the tell us, but the main one. And what we'll do is we'll call this Scene Assessment Web. Geolocation. South Africa. Time zone +2 Harare. There we go. Okay, now the actual establishment itself, like I say, a lot of it just comes down to reading what you're actually looking at. So you'll see this is a question and it asks, do I want to show my capture details on my .mobi? Now, if I'm not sure, luckily we've designed this process. I can always come back here and now look to see if they wanted to allow the direct respondent to see everything. Okay, so it doesn't look like we need anything. So we want to show all of the details. So we do want to show some on our .mobi, and to give you an idea of what you mean when we say .mobi, your .mobi is comprised of three things. It makes up, very first thing, is your questionnaire. Your questionnaire is always in your .mobi. The next thing is any form, any questions that I tell it to put in there from my capture form. So these questions here that I'll select. And third and last thing, if I scroll down, I'll come back up to these, is your introductory message to your .mobi. Those are the three elements of the .mobi, all customizable from different aspects within the system. .mobi questions to show. So which questions would I like to actually show in my .mobi? Well, in this case, there's nothing hidden from the technician. He'd like to see everything. So I can select all of it. In this sense, there's no reason for emails and SMSs to get sent out of the app, but to give you an idea, all you would need to do is just hit that button that you would like to send it, and then write out what you would like the SMS to say, obviously allowing you to append different information from your capture form into the SMS to provide a little bit of a more insightful information. So in this case, because our initiator, being the inspector, and the workshop, being the direct respondent, have both got access to the system and usernames and passwords, no reason to start spamming people with SMSs and emails. We can keep it all in app. If we go down a little bit to where our introductory message is, let's pop something up at the top of our introductory. So we'll say that we do want to show an introductory message, and what would we like to put in here? So let's just start typing out. Let's put, please when you are done. Perfect. Maybe center that, and then let's change that to our blue as well. Perfect. That's changed. Let's perhaps make it bold as well, and we'll increase the font size as well. Let's make it, say, 14. Okay, and let's change it to Arial. Obviously, you can go into as much customization here as you'd like. It's a little bit small. Let's maybe pop it up a little bit and see what the size. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Now it's actually readable. And then what we'll do is we'll put a little page break in the bottom here, making it a bit easier to read. And then maybe what we'll do is we'll pop some pictures in as well. Okay, if we scroll down, just to give you an idea, what these escalation in and out allows you to do is you can now start sending escalations out to particular email addresses or mobile numbers if forms do not get resolved within a specified amount of time. Just applying to in and out. You can also limit feedback to once, feedback being the form that the workshop fills out, but you wouldn't need that in this case because you'd like them to be able to do it more than once if need be. Then our thank you message. Once the person fills out the form on the capture form, once the person fills out the form on the .mobi, they'll be presented with a closing off page. On that closing off page, we'd like to put some information there for them. So let's throw in there a thank you. Submitted. Machine assessment submitted. We'll change this as well. Let's make it bold, and we'll make it the same as the other one. Arial. We know that 24 works. Make it 24, and then let's change it color to hashtag 055AFF. Perfect. Okay, cool. Thank you. Machine assessment submitted. If we scroll down, the next one we're looking for is our feedback notification alert. This is the alert that comes in when the feedback is filled out, aka the workshop filling out their questionnaire. So I'd like to send a notification for both negative and positive feedback. And what would I like that notification to be? So very first thing, I'd like to say that a certain person has responded to that form. Now, because remember I popped name into our questionnaire and made it hidden so that it couldn't be seen in the main.mobi, but it's still visible here. I can now click that number. The unique code is 24591. If I append that in there, you'll see it'll now hold that space for it. And I can then put, let's say, has responded to a, let's say, establishment, because you might have different machines there. Machine assessment for, and what we'll do is we'll, or let's just say that, let's pop in there maybe the outcome. Outcome. If we append outcome in there, now it'll tell us whether or not this machine has been sold, scrapped, or what it may be. Cool. Next thing down, and just to give you guys an idea of what you're looking at here, the send capture SMS alert, as well as if you look up a little bit top, it says send feedback email alert. All these are is it allows you to send out emails and SMSs to all application users that have access to the same establishment. We scroll down. Next one down we're looking for is the capture notification alert. We'd also like to allow this for all of them, whether negative or positive. And what that's actually going to be comprised of is I'd like to say that the inspector, so aka the person that signed in with their username, so username, new machine assessment for, and then I'd like to put there the machine make so that I can get that. Then what I would normally do is then you would take the website, in this case, and you can populate that within this block. you'll see that this big close off page that has the thank you message at the top also has a large click here button at the bottom that can then take somebody to a link. So if nothing is put in there, it'll take us through to the Magnitude website. And obviously you can now start pushing off people towards maybe more products or maybe rating different services, that sort of thing. And this text box here below it will be the information right above the click here. And you'll see where that now is. For more about us, and there'll obviously be a click here button at the bottom. Highlight this, let's change it as well to match the rest of the page. Arial 24. Cool. Okay, and that's changed. Perfect. Okay, if we scroll down, you don't need to worry about this for now. This is just allows for the resolution emails and SMSs as well as transferring of emails and SMSs. You scroll down to the bottom and that's, you see here the last little thing allows you to duplicate this establishment if need be. So for the sake of the demo, we'll just run with one. But what it allows you to do is create multiple establishments. Like I said, you may have different regions and you don't want to recreate everything I've just done. So all you would need to do is if you had, say, 2 more establishments coming on, you change that to a 2. You see it'll offer up the other names and you can then add them as you choose. You can then save. Perfect. Okay, and in saving, you'll obviously see our 2 establishments sitting there now. So the last and final step is the application user. So we actually obviously got to give somebody access to view this app. So in this case, we've got 2 users that we need to make, one being an inspector and another one being the workshop that's going to be conducting the fix. So all we do, same as the rest of everything else, add application user. And then now let's pop in the details of this. First one, name. Let's go with inspector. Email can be inspect@.com. And the number, we can just make it that for now. These little blocks here, the manager allows this user to see other users, obviously sending bulk SMSs. Can they remove things from their statistics? Are they allowed to delete anything? Are they a currently active user? Can they have default contacts? Can they resolve threads? In other words, can they resolve? So remember, the inspector is the person that's allowed to resolve. Can they import? This is the database reference that I touched on earlier, the person being able to add to that field. Can they import contacts from Excel? Can they have access to the contact database itself? And is that user active as far as analytics are concerned? Then what group do they form part of? Well, they can form part of the construction web. And if we go down, the type of one we made is we made a capture. So you'll see if we drop down capture establishment, you'll see here's our establishment sitting. All you need to do is if you top that, this person now has access to it. We go down, just select manager there. And what we do is we just give this person a username. Let's say inspector. And what we'll do is we'll make the password just 1234. Let's save. Okay, inspector is already taken. So let's go with inspector 11. Perfect. And we can now save. Now what we can do is we can now just duplicate this last user into the next user that we need to make. So there's no reason to go back and redo that. So all we need to do is we know both users need similar access. Next. And we'd like to just duplicate. And this works exactly like I just mentioned in the establishment section. Workshop. .com. Mobile. Give it that. Give him a username. Workshop 11. and you can then save. One last final thing just before we take our quick break here is we need to make sure that the inspector can see the workshop and that the workshop can see the inspector. The reason being is obviously when the inspector does something, you need the workshop to allow visibility on their side to see it. So if you go down to your select manager, you hit there, you'll see there, you can now obviously I want to see the workshop. You can save. And if I go back to the workshop one, I want this guy to see the inspector. Perfect. Select manager, inspector. Perfect. And now what that means is that if the inspector does anything, the workshop will receive a notification telling them that they did. Perfect, guys. So we're just going to take a quick 10-minute break, and when we come back, we'll pop up a demonstration for you and just show you how each of these different people will work. Cool. Thanks very much, and we'll catch you now. Give me a countdown. Okay, welcome back, everybody. This QR code is just going to be up for about 30 seconds more, but we will put it up at the end of the demonstration. We would just like to get set up for the demo. So in about 25 seconds, we're going to take this QR code down. Thanks. Control the app, everyone. Okay. Thank God. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're going to just pull this QR code down, but like I said, we're going to put it up after the demonstration. We're just going to get set up now, one being the mobile phone, who will act as the inspector, and the other one being the web app, who will act as the workshop. And just to give you an idea, obviously this app can be used on mobile devices as well as your desktop computer, being a laptop or a tower. Cool, welcome back, guys. What you'll be seeing on your left-hand side is the mobile cell phone, and what you'll see on the right is the web app. So just running off normal Google Chrome. And what we're going to do is on the left-hand side, we're going to log in as the inspector. And we made it inspector 11 and 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect, that's going to log in. And then on the other side, we're going to log in as the workshop. Perfect. Okay, and in being signed in, you'll see that they've got very similar fields to them, with obviously just slight changes here and there depending on the size of the screen and everything that you're looking at. Okay, perfect. So then what we'll do is we'll role play this through. So let's pretend as if the inspector, being the cell phone on the left-hand side, is going out to a machine and conducting an assessment. So very first thing that he would do, click those three little dots at the top right. It'll then populate these modules. If you remember, we changed them earlier from capture to new assessment and from feedback to all assessments. We obviously want to hit new assessment, and you'll see that it automatically locks to the workshop at the very top there. So now I know that this form is going through the workshop, and you can see how that there it's got that name, surname, mobile, email, and company, which are the different fields that we reference from our contact database within our capture form. We can then scroll down, and you'll see that we've got obviously our label items, so the beginning of the assessment. And then from here, we'll just put a machine make in there. So let's just put a cat. The model is a dozer. The machine number is 31259, for example. Serial number is T24. There we go. the total hours on the machine. I mean, this hours could obviously be changed to the odometer if need be. We can change, makes the machine hours. Let's just say that there are 13. The site that this is on is the Santon. Is the machine operational? So let's say that it is still operational, but that there are issues with that machine. If you scroll down, you'll see that, remember, I was touching on repetitive items and that how there's a repetitive block. And you'll see here how that's got issues written at the top in gray. Oops. Issues written at the top in gray. And each one of these questions forms part of this whole block with an add more at the bottom. So what this allows me to do is let's select an issue category. So let's say, for example, steering, description, steering column broken. You could obviously give a little bit more of a detailed description. Not working. You can obviously take any attachments that you'd like to add. And then after that, you can then indicate its severity. So let's say that it needs attention in that case. What you can do then is you can hit the add more, and you'll see what it does is it just populates another block that's empty here at the bottom. And let's just throw something in there. So we'll put brakes in there. And let's say that perfect. You can obviously take a photo of that, and same thing, that's just a mild issue. Once this is all filled out, you can then hit the submit button at the bottom. And in doing that, you'll see there's your form at the top, and you got an overall score of 58, which fails because remember we set our notification escalation based on form to 80%. Therefore, the pass mark is 80. And what you'll see on the right-hand side is that a notification just popped up on the right-hand side there with that little bell icon. If I click on that bell, you'll see that I have one notification waiting for me. I can tell that this one's waiting for me because it's bold and slightly, obviously, a little bit blacker than the one below it. And what I can do is I can now see that the Inspector 11 has conducted a machine assessment for a cat. If I click on that one, it'll take me straight to the form. I can now see all the details of this form as well as the time and date that it was submitted on. Scroll down and I can then see exactly what's wrong with this machine. What I can do then as the inspector, if I go down to the no action section, this is that chat section that we've been talking about. If you pop down there and you then can then set at. So if I type here at, you'll see that I get a list of people that I can talk to. So in this case, I'd like to tell the inspector or myself that I'm going to start the job. So if I click this little plus sign here on the right hand side and I click my template section, which is the middle button, you'll see I've got my 3 templates there. So being work started, interrupted, and completed. So if I click work started, you'll see it'll populate. And if I send this message now, you'll see here as the inspector, I got a little 1 notification at the top. I can now go in and see that Workshop 11 has started work. I can go in there. I also have the ability to type back. I can say at workshop. Great. Sending that back in. And the workshop will get another message coming back in. If they go back to their home screen, it will obviously refresh and provide that 1 notification up top. So you can click there. Another option is if I go back to my home screen, you'll see that I got a little chat waiting for me at the bottom left here below machine assessment. I can click that as well. And what it'll do is it'll take me to that particular chat that I'm looking for that activity. If I then click on that, it'll take me to the chat. And if I'm not sure what this is talking about, I can hit the drop down section where it says out, and I can now view and communicate back and forth with these guys. And there you'll see there's a little notification that popped up there as well for the inspector just being work started. And then obviously once the inspector has completed the job, he'll go into the chat section. He'll type there @inspector. Cool. And task complete or task finished. Perfect. Send that through. Okay. As soon as that is then done, the inspector then fills out the in form, so the corresponding form. If the guy clicks on that little red button, he'll go to all of his unresolved forms. Okay, and you'll see that there's a little blue button here at the top that, and if I could show you on the cell phone, you'll see that the cell phone doesn't have the little button, but the workshop does. The reason for this is that the workshop is the direct respondent in this case. So if he hits that little button there, just go into it. If he hits that little button, it'll open up what we were calling the .mobi. So in the .mobi here, we've got our introductory to the .mobi, which is comprised of the top section, as well as the capture details that we selected in the establishment bit, which is the bottom here. And if I scroll the whole way down, you'll see I now get presented with my workshop report. So the report that goes back in to the inspector. Cool, then let me just fill this out. So let's say we repaired the machine. What was done to fix it? Got new things, brakes brakes replaced. Cool. How long did it take? Well, now we can go back to the chat section and we can always see if we want to get an idea. But let's say that it took him 2 hours to do it. So we don't need to answer that one. Did we discover any problems? So let's say no, we didn't. But it could be problems like, say, we didn't have the correct machine, the correct tools to fix the job. Any attachments that we'd like to add? And then whether or not the issue has been resolved. So yes, it has. And let's say that we're solution's okay. We're not super satisfied with it, but it's okay. We can obviously add any pictures below for that solution. Once this is done, we can hit submit, which takes us to our closeout page, which says thank you, machine assessment submitted. And remember that big click here button? You can obviously click there and get taken to a respectable website. Cool. And in doing that, you'll see that I got a notification here on my cell phone as the inspector. If I click on that notification, I can go into it. I can see that workshop has responded to a machine assessment or machine. There we go. Outcome, yes, that's great. I can then scroll through this one, and now I got full access to see what was actually done. So I can see that a repair has taken place and that they replaced the brakes. Anything else? If I go back here and I go to my unresolved forms, I can now see that the bottom form has no corresponding form that's attached to it with these little binders. In this, I can now tell that the bottom form has not been fixed and that the top one has. And because I've set it up this way, I now can manage the different issues that may arise within the company. And once I'm satisfied that this form has been completed and that the fixes have actually been done, I can then see those two little ticks at the top right there next to the yellow dots. Yep, those ones there. And if I hit those, you'll see it'll turn green. And if I refresh my page, you'll see that that form will disappear and I'll only be left with the one. And you'll see that on the right-hand side, which is the workshop, you'll see that the workshop as well as the inspector have both only got one form now on. But if you look at the bottom there, you'll see that 2 forms have been sent out. Therefore, 2 inspections have taken place, but only 1 form has actually had a corresponding in form. Therefore, only 1 fix has taken place. And if I would like to see them, I can always go back to my list. If I hit that unresolved at the top right, it changes to all. And I can now view this form, which is obviously green now. And what it gives you, which is really nice, is that it provides a resolved time and date stamp. Who did it and when they did it, just so that you can obviously keep track of that. Then one last thing, just show you guys a bit of the analytics. So if we pull it up here, you'll see that we touched on the fact that we have snapshots. Perfect. And what you'll see from this is that out of the 2 forms that we've had, Operational, we have 50% of the time we're operational, and 100% of the time we've got issues. And the issue severity ranges at about 63%. And obviously this can be customized depending on the seriousness of some questions versus others. And you can obviously, if we click the little search function, we've got quite an extensive search whether or not you want to search by a particular question within your form, or whether or not you want to change the particular date that you're looking at. Perfect. The next one down is Item View. What Item View does is it's very similar to Snapshot, except it gives you a particular view for that individual question. So you'll see that this looks similar. These were the three that we had within our Snapshot. If we go look at the first one, which is operational, you'll see that we had two forms, and it gives you that individual score for this form. Perfect. Last one down is Tableview. And like I was saying earlier, Tableview is an overall count of something. So let's say, for example, let's take issue category, because that's something that hasn't been in our snapshot yet. If we take issue category, it'll give us a count on how many times something's being selected. So if you have a look here, you'll see that we've got a total entry of 2 forms. And out of those 2 forms, one has been engine and one has been brake, and one has been steering. Therefore, we know that 33% of the time we're getting issues around these particular ones versus maybe undercarriage and tires, which by the looks of things out of these 2 forms is never a problem. So obviously you can now measure it, therefore you can manage it. Go back here. Second last one is Activity Barometer. Just tells you how much activity is taking place within an app. So during the 14th of December, we've had 2 forms come in. So obviously as this starts to grow, because we've just made it, we've obviously only got 1 day, but you'll see that a long list of days and months can start to populate the app depending on how long you've been running and how much activity is taking place within the app. If we go back, the very last one that we've got here is Time Analytics. And we've got out versus in and out versus resolved. And if you see at the top right, I've got a little out button there. If I flick that, it'll switch to in, and I'll have in versus resolved. And you'll see what this tells you is how long since the out form, out being the capture form, aka the initiator form, which is what the inspector fills out, and the in form being the workshop form that they fill out. In other words, the questionnaire or the .mobi. So if I want to see, for example, how long it takes people to fix issues, I can go out versus in, and there I've got an idea of 5 minutes. So the average amount of time during the 14th of this month was 5 minutes. And like I said, this is what now starts to happen with the different graphs within your analytics. Once you start to get a little bit more data and not just 2 entries, and you start running for a week to month to year, you obviously start to get a little bit more data within these graphs, just showing you a little bit more. And you can see at the bottom left there that the average is about 5 minutes to submit the form. One last thing that I would just like to touch on. You'll see that on the cell phone, you'll see at the very top left there, you've got the little cloud with what looks like a sync button. What this allows us to do is you can now capture forms in offline mode as long as you've accessed the system at least once, because it obviously needs to save to your device's memory. So you would have had to clicked on this at least once in order for the phone to remember it. But then what you can do is you can now fill this form out with no cell phone reception at all, as long as you logged in. And then once you get back to reception, you just click that top left button, and what it'll do is it'll sync all of your forms. Obviously, the little bell icon is your notifications, and the settings icon on the right-hand side, or the gear, is your settings. What we can touch on here is if we click on the how it works, remember how we popped that in? We can click machine assessment, and there's the explanation of this particular process being machine assessment. If we go back, hit the settings again, we can offer a change of password. We can also turn notifications on and off, so we can decide if I want to receive alerts for the machine assessment. This does not include chats. It is only the in and out forms. Next one down, default contacts. So you'll notice how when I submitted this form and I clicked here new assessment, it automatically locks to the user workshop. The reason for this is that the workshop is the default contact for machine assessment. If I go down to default contact and I hit activities, you'll see workshop construction is submitted there. Therefore, that is my default contact for that activity. You can change it per establishment as well as per group as well. I can clear my alerts, which is obviously my little bell icon at the top hand side there, but I don't have any alerts, so I can't clear any now. Autosave, by default, every time you're filling out a form, it automatically saves to your drafts, which if you look here, you'll see you've got a draft at the bottom right. I've got none now, but what it does is it automatically saves every 1 minute. That can be changed in the CMS, just in case your battery dies or you lose reception. We want to be safe. Then last thing here. You'll see that you've got that little 2 and that little 1 at the bottom of your form. That shows you how many out forms, being the capture form you've had, and how many in forms you've had in the last days. Now you can choose what that means. So last days by default is 1 month. If I change that to 2 days or 1 day, I can now start to see how many issues I've had just today, or how many issues I've had in the last 3 months, or how many issues I've had in the last week. And you can then obviously change it accordingly, what suits you best as a user, because what may apply to you may not apply best to somebody else. Perfect, guys. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining our very first session here. It was quite exciting from our side to conduct something like this. And we look forward to running a lot of these in the future going forward. We're going to pull up the QR code at the end here, just in case. If you guys wouldn't mind just giving that a scan and letting us know just how we did, so that we can obviously improve as we go. Cool. Thanks very much, guys. And everybody enjoy the rest of their day. Thank you. Just a QR code.